May the words that I speak and the words that you hear be the same, and may they be acceptable to you, O Lord, our one living, loving God. Amen. For the next few minutes, I'd like to concentrate my thoughts on verses 12 and 13 of this morning's Gospel. And the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan. And he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. Seems that no sooner was the glory of the hour of Jesus' baptism over than there came his battle against temptation. I think there's one thing that stands out here in such a way that we shouldn't ignore it. Paul actually mentioned it on Wednesday evening at our Ash Wednesday service. And it was the Spirit who thrust Jesus out into the wilderness for his time of testing. The very same Spirit who came upon him at his baptism now drove him out for his test. In this life, it's impossible for any of us to escape temptation in some form. But one thing I think is sure: temptations are not sent to make us fail. They're sent to strengthen us, our minds and hearts and souls. They're not meant for our ruin, but for our good. They're meant to be tests from which we emerge better and stronger to serve God. Suppose someone enjoys playing football or rugby or some other sport. Suppose they're really doing well in the second team, showing real signs of promise. What will the team coach do? He certainly won't send him out to play with the with the third team, but you could probably walk through the game and not even break sweat. He'd probably send him out to play for the first team, where he'll probably be tested as he hasn't been before and have a chance to prove himself. That's what temptation is meant to do, to enable us to test ourselves and to emerge the stronger for it. Now, one, if you like, slightly technical point. As with many things we find in the Bible, the phrase 40 days probably shouldn't be taken absolutely literally, because it's the Hebrew phrase which is used to express a considerable length of time, such as when Moses was said to be on the mountain with God for 40 days in Exodus 24. It was Satan, who we sometimes call the devil, who tempted Jesus. And I have to admit to sometimes struggling with the idea of the devil. So perhaps it would help to look at the development of the concept of Satan, which I think is really very interesting. The word Satan in Hebrew simply means adversary. And in the Old Testament, it's used of ordinary human adversaries and opponents. The Philistines fear that David may turn out to be their Satan in 1 Samuel 29. David regards Abishai as his Satan in 2 Samuel 19. And Solomon declares that God has given him such peace and prosperity that he has no Satan left to oppose him in 1 Kings 5. So the word Satan began by meaning an adversary, a human one, and not any specific individual or entity. But as time goes on, it does take a step on a downward and somewhat more sinister path. It begins to mean someone who pleads a case against a person. It's in this sense that it's used in the first chapter of the book of Job. In that chapter, Satan has the particular task to consider men and to search for some case that could be made against them in the presence of God. He was the accuser of men before God. And the word's also used that way later in Job 2 and in Zechariah 3. The task of Satan was to find and to say everything that could be said against man. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the title often used for Satan is the devil. And the word devil comes from the Greek diabolos, which literally means slanderer. And it's only a small step from the thought of one who searches for everything that can be said against a person to the thought of one who deliberately and maliciously slanders people in the presence of God. Now, so far in the Old Testament, Satan is still in a human individual and not yet the malignant supreme enemy of God, but more just the adversary of man. But now the word takes a further step on its downward course. Because through their time of captivity, the Jews learned something of Persian thought. And Persian thought is based on the conception that in this universe there are two powers, the power of light and the power of dark. Almost an Ahriman. The whole universe is a battleground. Between them, a man must choose which side he is on in that cosmic conflict. To put a slightly more Jewish Persian slant on it, we could take the view that this is a world where there is God and God's adversary, Satan, the devil. So it was almost inevitable that Satan, the devil, should come to be regarded as the adversary par excellence. And that's really what his name has come to mean. This is what he always was to man. But now Satan becomes the essence of everything that is against God too. Now when we turn to the New Testament, we find that it is the devil, or Satan, who seduces Judas in Luke 22. The devil whom we must fight in 1 Peter 5 and James 4. It's the devil whose power is being broken by the work of Christ in Luke 10. Satan, the devil, is now the power which is against God. And here we have the essence of the temptation story. Jesus had to decide how he was to do his work. He was conscious of a tremendous task, and he was also conscious of tremendous powers. God was saying to him, "Take my love to men, love them till you die for them." Satan was saying to Jesus, "Use your power to blast men, obliterate your enemies, win the world by strength and power and bloodshed." God said to Jesus, "Set up a reign of love." Satan said to Jesus, "Set up a dictatorship of force." And Jesus had to choose between the way of God and the way of Satan. And this, of course, is the message for us all. In life, we have a choice: to be a follower of God or to be an adversary of God, and all that follows on from that decision. In our story presented to us by Mark, the choice seems straightforward. Temptation is clear, and of course, Jesus is strong enough to reject it. For us, it often seems to be so much more difficult and more complicated. And as mere human beings, we may also feel less well equipped to cope with it. But note the last few words of that passage. "And the angels waited on him." Or, as it is in another translation, "the angels took care of him." I'd like to leave you with the suggestion that we also have to remember that just like Jesus in the desert, Whatever temptations and trials we have to face, we don't have to cope with them alone either.